Welcome back to the Shared Practices podcast. This is season 4, but we're going to take a break today from case acceptance for a special announcement. My good friend, Kiera Dent, who is part of a team that works with Dr. Mark Costes, she has her own coaching and consulting company. They have teamed up, Dr. Mark Costes and Kiera Dent, to release a brand new podcast for dental teams. So not just for the dentist. It's called the Dental A-Team Podcast. We'll get into it in this interview today, but I was so excited that I paused everything and we pushed all the episodes back just to announce this and release this episode with Kiera. And in turn, I got to pick her brain about some of my favorite topics and some things that are going to be relevant to me very soon here. So this is an interview with Kiera Dent from the Dental A-Team Podcast. Recently, I went to Washington, D.C. with my family for a wedding. We ended up using Uber every single time we needed to get somewhere. We could have taken a cab, which would have been more expensive, sometimes convenient, sometimes not, or we could have rented a car, which would have cost a little bit more up front, but we would have had more freedom. However, I would have had to navigate DC, figure out where to park it, and then pay all the parking fees. So why did we use Uber? It was both more convenient and less expensive. That's the exact same thing with Lab Pronto. Lab Pronto is Blue Sky Bio's solution to both convenience and cost. So within Blue Sky Bio, you can just export to Lab Pronto and access all these labs across the country that are plugged in. You could buy your own 3D printer, have a lot more control, and become the lab yourself, or you could send your cases to a traditional lab that's going to charge you $400 to $500 per case for the designing and fabricating of the guide and sending it back. Why not have the best of both worlds? Why not have a more convenient solution that actually costs less? That's exactly what Lab Pronto is. Check it out within the Blue Sky Bio software. Click on the button at the very top called Lab Pronto. You're going to be exporting your cases and getting them back in no time. Okay, I have with us again today Kiera Dent, one of my best friends. I am a super fan of everything that Kiera does. This is like a special interruption to your regular programming for an announcement that you guys should not miss out on. So Kiera, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. It always just makes me so happy when you and I get a chat because it takes me back to when we were at Midwestern, and I'm so proud of you. And I think our worlds have it makes me so happy to have them combine. And, we just weave in and out, and gosh, it's so good to talk to you. How are you doing?
Doing good. We are now in Indiana, as I've kind of told you, which is crazy because I'm not a dentist full-time during the day. I'm a medical recruiter for the Army and trying to dentist as a side gig and then podcasting as a side gig. So a lot of side gigs. Yeah.
I'll be in Indiana on Saturday, actually. So I'll be in Fishers, Indiana for an event on Saturday, the 16th. So not too far from you.
That is awesome. Well, doesn't DSN have a center here?
They do. So me and Aaron Nicholas are actually doing the first event, the ribbon cutting event, on February 15th and 16th. He does an event on Friday, and I do a team event on Saturday in Indiana, the new DSN facility. So it'll be fun.
That is awesome. I might have to come crash if possible.
Oh, you absolutely should come pop in. He's doing the 1 hour molar, endo, root canal, build up and crown. And I'm doing the treatment coordinating masters of how to close the deal. So it'll be fun.
That's awesome. Well, that is not the only thing on the 15th. So this episode will be coming out on the 15th. Is that the day of your podcast being released, or is it the day before? Are you coming out Valentine's Day or Friday the 15th?
We are coming out Valentine's Day because I feel like our podcast that we're putting out there should be given a little love to the dental community. So that's why I said Valentine's Day is when I wanted it released. So Valentine's Day.
Well, tell us about this podcast. And I'll just preface this. I was at Voices of Dentistry, which ironically, if anyone was going to be launching a podcast, Voices of Dentistry would be a really smart place to be. But when you have commitments, you have commitments. I understand. But I did an episode with Mark and Alistair McDonald that just blew my mind. And so I literally went back for the last year. I haven't been able to keep up with Mark's podcast, The Dentalpreneur. I was like, I need to go catch up. So I went and I downloaded every episode with you and with Alistair and with anything about multi-practice and just listen to all of those in like the past 6 days. And so when I heard that you were coming out with your own podcast, I was just like, this needed to happen. This needed to happen yesterday, because you and Mark get on the mic and he'll just like ask you like, hey, Kiera, give us, what would you do in this situation? And you'll just like, bam, 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 bam. You've got this like plan, examples, how to go about it. Let's implement it. Let's go. So
Yeah.
Tell us about your show.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited. I can't wait for Mark and I decided we wanted to have a doctor and team podcast, because I went to him and I said, Mark, I'm going to do a team podcast. Like, I don't feel there's a lot out there for teams, especially front office, which doctors, I know, working at Midwestern, you don't really learn the front office at all.
Right.
And then, dentists, they can train hygienists and dental assistants easier because that's clinical and you're great with clinical. But Mark and I decided I said, Mark, I don't really want to do a podcast. Like, it stresses me out to have to do this. But in October, I was hiking Half Dome, and I was thinking about the businesses and talking about them. And I'm like, you know what? We definitely need to do it. So I mentioned it to Mark, and Mark decided that he wanted to be a part of it, which obviously I'm thrilled about. And we're doing a doctor and team perspective on the podcast. So it'll be like just a ton of awesome knowledge for teams, but from a dentist perspective and from a team's perspective, because I feel so often doctors go and learn all this great CE, and, they listen to podcasts and learn so many things, which is fantastic. But then you come and tell the team like, hey, let's implement this great idea. And as a team member, I'm like, oh, well, I don't quite have the whole vision as to why we're doing this. And so we thought, if we could have a team member and a doctor's perspective, bring those together, and then just have like a ton of fun, really, really tactical, practical ways to like true life. It's not, we'll get on this podcast and say, well, we think this will work. No, Mark and I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of practices and implemented all these different ideas. And now we get to share all those ideas with everyone in the dental world. So it's the Dental A Team podcast. We want our teams to be the A team. So I'm so excited. I did not want to do this, and I am just giddy. And yes, I should have been at Voices of Dentistry. They even offered me a spot in the tent. I was like, I did look up flying red eyes back and forth, but I decided I needed to keep my family commitments, even though I really wanted to be there. So Valentine's Day, it'll be fun.
You were in Hawaii, weren't you?
I was. And, Hawaii was, maybe had I been in like, I don't know, a freezing cold place, I might have reconsidered going to Arizona, but I was in a real dreamy area. Yeah. And it was a lot of fun.
No, good call on your part. No, this is going to be awesome. So people can look up Dental A Team podcast or DAT podcast, DAT, Dental A Team podcast. That's super cute.
Because I just think that's clever. Like, yeah. I love DAT podcast, and also the DAT is what tests you take to get into dental school. So I feel like it was just like real witty and clever. And then Mark and I took it a step further. And instead of having like, Richard, I love your podcast logo because you've got the loops on and you've got your headphones on. And I just think it looks so clever.
Oh,
and
thanks.
Mark and I wanted to have our faces. Yeah, absolutely. So you inspired our logo. We were trying to have somebody draw our like characters and like our faces, kind of like the Hacks and you, like we combined those two. Those were our favorite pictures.
Sure.
And we got some that looked like, oh my gosh, Mark and I were dying at some of the renditions of our faces. Like I looked like a man. I looked like I had dentures. It was atrocious. We just laughed. And then somebody drew like Mark and I as characters, kind of like you'd find in like San Francisco or Disneyland. And we actually love it. We think it's just fun. It's playful, very non-intimidating. And that's what it'll be. So when you look for us, it'll be Mark and Mark was worse than me. He had to get his like skin tone shade down perfectly. And like we went through probably 6 renditions to get his tone just what he wanted.
This poor person on Fiverr or whoever it was, they're just like, no, we've run out of corrections, or what are those called? When you need like, oh no, we need to fix this. No, that's awesome. I am so excited. I think so often the doctor is the bottleneck of change and implementation and leadership, because you're right. You can listen to podcasts, you can go to conferences, you can do all these things. But if the team's not on board, if they're not bought in, if they don't understand the why, the how, the where it's going to fall apart, they're not driving this, you're just going to spend so much time and effort without that buy-in, and it's not going to be what you want it to be. So giving this information directly to team members. If I had a team member who was like, hey, I just listened to this on this podcast, I think it'd be a good idea. Here's how other offices have done this, and they're giving me an episode to listen to, like, that's like my dream come true. So I really hope that not only, because doctors are going to listen to it because they know you and they know Mark. But I'm excited for you guys to break into this new niche and this new audience and have team members who can relate and use what you're teaching them and immediately turn around and implement it in their office. So that's so cool. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing it with your listeners, because I really do feel, as I've coached and worked in a lot of different offices, like I was in an office this past week and they said, Kiera, I've told my team all these things. Like, I don't understand how you coming in, you were able to get them to have buy-in. Whereas, I've tried this for so long and I couldn't get buy-in. And I don't think I'm anything special or there's special sauce to me. I truly think it's talking to team members from somebody who's literally been in their shoes. And a lot of times doctors haven't been in their shoes. They haven't experienced what it's like to be on hold with Delta Dental for 45 minutes trying to get a breakdown, just for a doctor to come up and ask me for a treatment plan. And I have to hang up on that 45-minute call, or trying to, like, a schedule falls apart and you have to try and figure it out. And so I really hope to resonate with all the listeners of, like Mark and I on our intro, we say, we don't just understand you. We actually are you. Mark's walked the line of being a doctor and being a practice owner. I walked the line of being a practice owner and a team member. And so I did not want to give anything out there to our listeners that we haven't tried firsthand. Mark and I have made so many mistakes across our journey that we can't wait to explain that and to give easier ways to just make life for the doctors and for team members easier and fun and more efficient from, hundreds and hundreds of data tests that we put out there on them. So thank you for sharing this and letting me share my excitement about the Dental A team.
Yeah. So if anyone is listening right now, unless you are driving or on a bicycle, you need to stop, go into your podcast app, look up Dental A Team podcast. And this is coming out on Friday, so it will have come out the day before. So I can't look it up right now, but you need to stop right now and look this up and subscribe, leave a review, listen to this. It's going to be fantastic. So we'll get into some content here, but this, like, literally, I'm bumping all of my episodes back that we have in our content pipeline, because it's like, no, hold the phone. Kiera and Mark have a new podcast. This is going to be fantastic. Everyone needs to be on board with this. So
thank you. That speaks volumes, and I can't thank you enough for that, because, and everyone share the word. Like, the more we have out there, like, I can subscribe and send us feedback at any time. We've got info@thedentalateam.com, and you can submit what you want to learn about. We'll have them always like 15 to 30 minutes is what we average on our podcast. I mean, our first one's coming off will be scheduling verbiage and treatment coordinating, how to, like, get comfortable talking money, and like actual tactical, practical things that you can implement. I think we even have another one that talks about reviews. So just super quick, we wanted to give action-packed items, and that's how the bulk of them will be every time. So thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it.
And this is going to be, like, unsolicited feedback, which is, like, as a podcast host, that's what I'm all about, is giving people ideas and suggestions when I have no authority or space to do so. But
I'm ready.
So maybe, and Alan Mead is all about this with his show. Like, he loves the idea of segments and of shows with, like, different chunks, different segments. So maybe in your show, you dedicate like 10 minutes to, like, presenting a concept in a way that could be used as a weekly meeting. So it's like, here's your weekly meeting. And you do it kind of in a concise way so that, like, you don't get too deep into the weeds or are sidetracked on other things. And then the rest of the 20 minutes is like the discussing that and the implementation, and you kind of allow yourself to branch out, but it's not as focused and tightly packed. So that weekly team meeting, someone could literally say, okay, guys, we're going to do this 10 minutes. They're going to put their phone down in their break room, and they're going to hit play, and you're going to do that weekly team meeting. And then they pause it, they talk about it, they implement it. And then, the team can listen to that again at some point during the week. They can listen to the rest of the episode, or maybe there's other stuff for the team, as they're implementing. I don't know. Just thinking off the cuff here.
I love it. That's genius. I pulled out my notes on my phone because I just keep adding ideas for the podcast as they come along. And you were at the top of that list with the massive stars next to it to remind myself. That's such a brilliant idea in a very easy way. Mark and I might have to do like every Monday morning, here's a team topic idea. Because gosh, that was brutal when I used to have to come up with team meetings every week. I thought, what am I supposed to talk about? Like, what haven't we talked about yet that we could go over? So that's genius. I love it. Richard, he is one of my mentors. He's one of my best friends, and I'll text him and say, I need ideas. Help me, because I really love what you created. So brilliant. I love that. Anytime you got unsolicited feedback, I will take it.
Deal. Okay, cool. Well, now it's my turn then.
Okay, fantastic.
So right now, I still have time in the Army. I'm looking for a moonlighting job where I can practice on the side, potentially maybe partnership, ownership type stuff. But that's, like not quite there. And even if it was quite there, if I hadn't closed on things, I wouldn't be able to talk about it. So let's just talk about some hypothetical things with ownership where you can't be there full time, and transition and leadership. And I've been thinking about this idea of, if I were to own a practice or be a partner in a practice and have to lead a practice when I couldn't be there full time, what that would look like and how to establish that leadership. And I was thinking about it. This is kind of almost like what you do. Like, you coach offices and influence and lead offices when you're not there all the time. You're there maybe, I don't know what your most involved clients, how often you're in their offices and how often you're in contact with them. But I just wanted to see what you thought on, like, people say, if you can't be in the office, then maybe you shouldn't own that office. You know what I mean? Like, the more spread thin you get, the harder it is to influence and lead. So what are your thoughts on how someone can lead and inspire in a multi-practice setting, or in a setting where they can't be somewhere full-time?
Well, that's actually a really intriguing question, because ultimately I'm not a dentist and I own dental practices. I can't be in these practices. And that's something that's actually been my real life that I've had to do. Plus I coach and I do leave. And so I think it's a mindset thing. And I really believe everyone who knows me knows that we preach systems all the time, but beyond that, I think it's you being intentional. And I do this because also my personal business is, I'm not even around my team members 98% of the time. We live across the country. We don't work together. And it was a change for me to figure out. I went from working in a practice where I would always be there. I would talk to them every single day. And then now I work in all these places that I'm always remote. And so it's really a matter of getting phenomenal systems in place. It's having a clear vision of what you want it to look like, but then getting massive team buy-in. And then I used to think I could just lackadaisically, like, the practices would work. And because I wasn't there, it was very easy for me not to watch my numbers, not to watch the systems that I had going in place, because I wasn't there. And so I had to get really, really, really intentional about watching my numbers and having that a set dedicated time that I never missed.
Okay.
I did not miss watching those numbers. I did not miss checking in with my team. And it wasn't something that I just did half-heartedly. I really dove into it. But I mean, it's easy because when you're not there all the time, when you're not watching it, it's easy for things to slip to fall. But that's where you get really intentional about what exactly you want to have.
Well, let's talk about that then. First off, tell me about, for our listeners, what is your ownership involvement right now with practices? Like, where are these practices that you are either part owner, what is the scenario there? And
Hmm.
what are the numbers that you look at, on what frequency, and how do you check in?
Sure. So I will be wildly honest. Right now, my ownership piece is I have 5 to 10% in most practices. And the bulk of my ownership now, because I have consulting experience and that's what I'm good at, and that's what a lot of offices want from me, is I do consulting. So just like I do, so it's a little unfair right now. But in the past, before that, when I didn't have the consulting services that I could offer, my role specifically for who I am, which I think looks different than a doctor does, my role was to help the teams always. So it was checking in with the office manager, checking in with the regional manager. And this is what I wanted to get into of KPIs. Like when I was an office manager, I was terrible at KPIs. I didn't even know what that stood for. So the key performance indicators, you need to have a solid checking in on every single one of those KPIs every single week, and then a deep dive every single month, and then a reflection of month over, like every single year you're looking back the year behind to see where you were and if you are actually growing as a practice or not. And that is where I feel those pieces are what I used to look at, but also I could have been so much better because numbers never lie. And so that's what I've done with my coaching clients is I have them report those KPIs to me every single week so I can see where things are falling apart, where things are going well. And that I believe is what you need to do when you're not in a practice because those numbers tell you everything. They will tell you what's going on. And morale, they're like, but I'm not there to see morale. I'm not there to see the patient experience. And I'm like, those numbers are a measuring stick. And if they're going up, you know that your team's working well together. Morale has got to be higher because the numbers are going up. They're working together as a team. When your numbers are dropping, case acceptance is probably lower. Your team morale is probably lower. And it's literally just this gauge that you can watch when you're not there, and you can get so much information from it. And then I would weekly meet with each office manager or regional manager to assess, but I had them report on it, and then we would brainstorm together what to do from there.
Okay, so let's look at this. What do you use to monitor these? So I know you could just run these reports manually. Do you use Dental Intel? Do you use Practice by Numbers? Do you use Divergent Dental? What's your preferred way to monitor KPIs? And
Hmm.
and then we'll get into what the KPIs are.
Sure. So I like blended model as my favorite, meaning you can pick whichever software or dental analytical software you want, whether it's Dental Intel, Divergent, Practice by Numbers. Dental Intel tends to not be, I think all of them have their like pluses and minuses.
Sure.
Dental Intel tends not to have as accurate of numbers because
I've
it doesn't
heard
hold their,
that.
yeah, but they have a phenomenal follow-up program with it. So you can do better with your reactivation and recare follow-up through Dental Intel. None of the other softwares have that. Divergent tends to be very accurate, pulls right from it, but it doesn't have as much of the reporting like Dental Intel does.
Right.
And then Practice by Numbers, I've heard nothing but great things, but I only have a few clients on it. And my hunch is it's a much higher price point than the other two.
It's
And
not
so,
higher. The thing with Practice by Numbers that I've seen, so George has it, my co-host.
mhm,
It doesn't tend to filter the information and give you just like I feel like Dental Intel does a really good job of focusing you on the stuff
mhm,
that's relevant. Practice
sure,
by Numbers gives you like everything, every every single graph and way that you could look at this, and you have to kind of build your own custom dashboard that focuses
mhm,
you down on what's really important. So
sure,
I think out of the three, I think Dental Intel is the most expensive. Practice by Numbers number two, and then Divergent I think is the cheapest. But it's almost like a Apple versus Android. Like Dental
right,
Intel is the Apple user experience, still not perfect, but for usability and getting the team on board and using it for recalls, a lot of people like that. And that's probably there's a one scenario that I might end up in some sort of partnership opportunity, and they're using Dental Intel. So I'm probably going to be on board with Dental Intel for the next year or so, and I really want
sure.
to try and implement it to its fullest. Okay, time for some Facebook reviews of Q Optics. The first one here is regret. This is someone who wished they could have had Q Optics loop. They said, don't do, and they said a company name that we won't mention here, but it rhymes with fiber optic. Don't do fiber optic. Their customer service has been terrible for me and buddies from my same school. If I had the option, I definitely would have gone with Q Optics. Another one here by Setu. She says, I've researched and tried all of the different brands of loops, and Q Optics are the best loops, hands down. I got the prismatic and have noticed a huge difference in my work and posture. I like what Nick Hill did here. He said, a few classmates and I met the Oroscoptic, Surgitel, Designs for Vision, and Q Optics rep for lunch, each one on a separate day. Good call. That would have been bad to just invite them all for a big rumble. He says, I liked the Q Optics product the most lightweight, great design, no need for side shields since the frames are OSHA compliant, amazing customer service, and optical quality works well for me. I purchased the 3.5x non-prismatic. Okay, last review. Laura said, I have Q Optics Prismatic 4.0 and they are the best investment I've made in dental school. This was a post on a dental student Facebook page, and so there's a lot of like, oh, my school didn't offer Q Optics, and then there's people saying, just buy them anyways. Like, this is 100% worth it. You're using these every single day. It's your neck, it's your back, it's the quality of your work. It's worth the investment no matter what, whether you're a dental student, whether you're a new dentist, whether you're an established dentist. These are just fantastic loops. Check them out at qoptics.com. Email sales@qoptics.com with the promo code SP19 for a discount on your loops and light combo. Let's talk about, and you said a hybrid. So you said use one of these software tracking systems, but then you're also pulling some reports. Is that what you're about to say?
So kind of. So in the sense of I have the office manager, I'm really big, and you could call it old school style. I'm not sure which ones are, like, I just believe that when you write down the information, because Divergent or Dental Intel, they come to your inbox, you get this. But I almost feel like it's kind of like, the news or your Facebook feed. Like, you just kind of can.
I've got an analogy for you here. I think it's
okay. I'm ready.
It's like using Mint as a budgeting software that when you just look back and you're like, oh yeah, I guess we spent money in this and this and this, versus like proactively budgeting and saying, oh hey, this month we're going to set aside this amount for savings. We're going to do this with this and proactively plan. Like when you have to figure things out and write it yourself versus it just is automatically fed up to you. Like your brain just like doesn't process it as much.
That's exactly right. And so it's being very proactive as opposed to reactive or just glossing over it, where it's just there and it's great. We get our reports, but what do you actually do with it? And so I have office managers and regional managers and doctors on the KPI report that you turn in every single week and month. You really focus in on, okay, so what was our case acceptance for this week? What was our reappointment percentage? What was our production collection? What's our attrition? And those dental softwares are phenomenal because they spit that information out. That's very hard to pull. You can pull it from the software, but it's a lot harder to pull. And so that's what I have them do. But then I even go a step beyond that of,
and
like, recently.
Are those the 5? I think it was 5. Say that again. Are those the ones that you just want from those automatically by default, the ones you're looking at?
So those ones by default, I definitely love. And those come from the software,
the
dental analytical software, like reappointment percentage, track that manually. And you can run reports in your software, but it's like running multiple different reports to try and figure it out. Whereas Divergent, Dental Intel, Practice by Numbers, those are very easy to give you that information just at the drop of a hat. Like you can find that instantly. So that's where I feel is a huge time saver, and you can watch it every single day, every single week. Case acceptance is also tricky, and the softwares run it differently. Some run it by, let's say it's a $30,000 treatment plan and they schedule the $150 billing. That's 100% case acceptance versus how much dollar amount was actually accepted of total treatment plan.
Right.
So you have to take that with a grain of salt as well and just know how it's pulling those reports for you. but I get all that information. Those are some big KPIs: production, collection, reappointment percentages. I want to make sure my hygiene department's really good at reappointing patients. Case acceptance, we aim for about 85 is what an average healthy practice is. I personally like it to be closer to 90, 95. And then also, I really love tracking new patients. That's easy to pull from your dental software.
Mm-hmm.
Attrition is a tricky one to run from your dental software without a report. And that basically means how many new patients have come into the practice that month versus the number of patients who haven't been seen within a 12 or 18-month period, meaning they've left the practice in some way, shape, or form, or they're just not reactivated. And that attrition number.
To process this, I'm just trying to like think about this. So it's like if we got 10 new patients this month, but 10 of our patients now are also have not been seen in 18 months, like they're whatever the cutoff is. And so now we've kind of considered them inactive. Now, like our net patient flow is 0 because even though we gained 10, we've kind of lost 10. Is that what that's looking at?
Correct. That's exactly right. And you try to baseline at 0 or at least a positive influx as opposed to a negative, because that helps you see, is your practice growing or is your practice dying based on our patients? Are we getting more patients than we're losing? And also you can see, like, is our back door wide open, or like, are we losing patients out the back door constantly while we're like fishing constantly for new patients? Could we close that back door and reactivate the patients already there as an easier model for new patient growth?
Well, and it could be interesting because maybe even because I was like, well, isn't that reappointment rate? But I was thinking your reappointment rate, say that you had a recent focus on reappointment rates. The stuff in the last 2 months, you're like, okay, we've been doing much better with our reappointment rate. But the stuff from a year and a half ago, those patients, we weren't focusing on reappointment rate. And therefore, those ones are still not scheduling. So if we're not kind of mining the data for those patients who are now overdue and kind of out of our practice, then even though our reappointment rate is better now, we could still have a net attrition of patients out of the practice.
Correct. And those patients are so easy when you start watching these numbers. Those are the patients that are easy for you to have. They've already been in your practice.
Sure.
You just need to watch that. So it's a very easy, low-hanging fruit when you start watching that.
Okay, cool. No, that's great. Okay. I feel like we got a handle on those things that you said there. What were you going to say next with not pulling reports custom, but you're about to say something else?
Yeah. So what we did is I like to track then. So you pull all that from your analytical software, but then I like to also check, how many reviews does our practice have? Are we growing on our reviews? Are we not? So you go find that information on the internet. But what about how many holes are in our hygiene and doctor schedule? Are we utilizing the time? Or are we missing the time from our doctors and our hygienists? And sometimes it's in 30-minute increments. But when they start to have to write down every single week, we had 16 hours of open time based on the 5 days we were here. That's a lot of open time that we were missing. And so they track that. Also, you can literally track anything you want. You can track, was our hygiene department on time? How many referrals did we get this week? I also look heavily at the AR every single week, because AR tends to be one of those things that if you're not really intentional about it, it can get out of hand really quickly. I feel like it's kind of like a forest fire where once it starts, like that kindling catches, it can just rip apart because you don't watch it. And I hear from a lot of front office, Kiera, I just didn't have time. We were just so busy with the phones that I didn't watch the AR. And I think, whoa, we need to fix time management, because the AR should be one of the top things you are watching like a hawk every week. But when somebody has to report that to you every week, these numbers start to become intentional, and they know you're looking at them. Your front office or your office manager is looking at them, and you're very aware of every piece of your practice. And so AR also will tie into the number of unsent claims for the week, because a lot of times the claims go to the clearinghouse, but they don't actually submit and you get a report. So having them track how many unsent claims there are, having them track how many claims they had to resubmit that week, making sure they're resubmitting claims that got denied for whatever reason, and also checking to see how many claims are being denied and finding the trend. Are we not attaching narratives? Are we missing the x-rays? Why are we having to resubmit all these claims? So it really just helps you see trends in your practice week over week, month over month by watching these KPIs.
So do they submit this to you as like an email report, and it's like each Thursday or each Friday or something like? How do you go about? What does this look like?
Yeah. So it is exactly that. So however you want to do it, if you're remote, just like we were talking, you're not in the practice. How can I keep a handle on the practice? Well, right there, that's how you keep a handle on it. So for my team that I don't see all the time, which I feel is a very easy way to relate to your question, I have them report to me. But as I run a lot of companies, I'm on the road all the time and I am busy. And to be quite honest, I would forget to check in on this. And so what I personally do is there's a plugin on like I have Gmail and there's a plugin called Boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you need to do, I utilize Boomerang because I just think it works very well. But I have a Boomerang set up on my email that will email me every single Friday to make sure I get KPIs from these people. I don't send the reminder to my team. I want them to be intentional and to remember without me reminding them. That way I know they're thinking about it. They know, and they're setting up their own reminders. But then I have a reminder on my own side that pops in my email that says, did you receive the KPIs from Tiffany, Kaylee, Amy, Sarah, all the other people that I wait for? And they send me an email. I keep mine on Google Drive. And so I have a shared Google Doc. So I can go through and ask questions or respond back to their KPI. And then I recommend, which I do with my team, but also doctors with their office managers or whomever's reporting this, to have a meeting that you go over those KPIs. And I have all of my team members, and I coached offices as well, that at the bottom, like your whole team, like they report all these numbers to you. But then at the bottom, you say what their plan of action is, and they have to list 3 things, but they have to tie it back to the KPI. So this week, we're going to focus on marketing. Fantastic. Why are you focusing on marketing? Which KPI are you looking at that's saying we need to work on marketing? Well, our new patient flow is at 1 for the month. So we need to dive into something to generate new patient flow. Well, I might say, but look at our case acceptance. Like our case acceptance is down low and we're missing all these calls, or, our customer service is down, whatever it is. Maybe let's also focus on that before. And also, are we tracking our marketing? Where's our marketing money going? Are we tracking the ROI on that? And if not, I don't know that I want to invest a ton of money on that marketing. So it really helps you see. I like putting the 3 action items and making it tie back to the KPI from your team member, because it gives you a glimpse into their brain as well of what they're looking at and how you can coach, lead, and guide your team member to help your practice grow, utilizing the KPIs as the framework for all decisions.
So this would look like the last clinical day of the week, or maybe there's like an admin morning or something like that. But on a day when everyone's there in the morning, this report gets run and everyone looks at it, and then everyone writes down their 3. Like, how do you actually do it, and
Sure.
what's been effective?
Yeah. So let's simplify that. I have just one person report this. So
Okay.
I typically rely on the office manager. Office manager collects this data. So there's a form, and I'm happy to share the ones that I have so you can kind of see for yourself, and they can change over time, because you might realize as you look at this every week that, oh, I really want to know about this. Add it to the KPI. It's great. So office manager, or whomever the leader of your practices are, the one that you have delegated this to, they report it all. It does not mean that that office manager has to know all this. They can use other team members, but it's the office manager's responsibility to report this. They email it in on, say, Friday. You review it on your own or together. I tend to look at mine on my own, and you kind of see where they are. The office manager selects the 3 items that they feel would be the most important, impactful, with a plan of action. And then you review, say, that Friday, or maybe on Mondays when you guys have your meeting for an hour before. I personally like meetings either usually on Monday, just because you start the week fresh. So I get the KPI Friday. We think about it over the weekend. Monday, we put together the plan of action from both perspectives. And then office manager goes and kind of tells the team what's going on if you're not in the office. And then once a month, when you have your big KPI, like you're reviewing the month, you and the office manager would review, come up with a plan for the month, and then you would have a big team meeting for the entire month saying, hey, these are all the KPIs. And the whole team doesn't need to know all of this. It's more the big ones, the production, collection, new patients, reviews, attrition, case acceptance, reappointment, things that they're really impacting. And then based on that information, this is what we're going to focus on for this month and how everybody can contribute to that individualized. Does that simplify?
Yeah, no, that was great. That was a really kind of detailed, like how you'd actually implement that. Cause I feel like it all made sense to me, but I'm like, but what does this actually look like? So now I'm like, okay, yeah,
Sure.
no, I know what that actually looks like. So this is great. And what would you do if on Friday you got back some numbers and you saw that you were struggling in that area, in new patients or case acceptance? What's your kind of default if you're seeing a negative trend?
Mm-hmm.
How do you address that? How do you hold people accountable remotely in a way that's going to encourage improvement rather than like shutting? I don't know, just sometimes people it's hard to be like, hey, I'm noticing this is going on here. What's the deal? And there's probably a story and there's probably a reason. And at the same time, there you have to decide, is that story or is that reason, does that justify, or is there something more that we could have done despite that story or reason?
Right. No, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought this up because I think this is an area that we can help a lot of people. And I didn't mention this, but on the KPI, I put the goal that I want to see. So let's say like case acceptance is blank, like what was our case acceptance for the week out of our 85 or 95% goal? What is our new patient out of this goal? And so the reason I do that is it sets an expectation that's very clear. Instead of it being like, I got to come talk to you that this is negative. Well, they can crystal clear see, this is our goal. This is where we're at. That already sets an expectation that helps. And then I say to really foster a culture that expects excellence. Like I have a very strong expectation of my team. My team members know, I tell them all the time, like we go over this over and over again, that I base my companies off of Google and Apple. Those, I think that they are phenomenal companies. I think they empower their employees. I feel like they make your life super easy and it's just easy. It's so nice. It's so great. And their employees love what they do. They have these free lives and they're encouraged to create and to dream. And that's that's what I model my company off of. And then I also have core values that my team knows. Like we talk about how we are so good at ignore us and that we give people more value than they ever would have expected, like blow their minds over the top with value compared to what they pay us. We also believe in speaking with integrity. Like everything we say, if we say we'll call you at this time, we own that. And if we don't do that, we own that and we let you know what you can count on us for. Like that is what my team culture is. And they know that. I have very high expectations of everyone on my team. I tell them, if you can't stamp your name on that and feel fantastic, don't do it. Like we don't halfway do anything. I expect it. Those are pretty high expectations of a team to have. But at the same time, I also tell them, you better be able to fail and fail successfully. So I don't care. We're going to make 1,000 mistakes. I expect you to make mistakes because then I know we're growing. And I'll make mistakes. I have to own that. But I think as a leader, as you not being there, you're very intentional on the culture that you want to create. Tell them, give them the expectation, like have those core values, have those mottos. And I don't go crazy. They've got to be able to repeat back to me. I think it's easy to base it off of a company that people know. I have a book. It's called The Go-Giver that every single person on my team reads. They know what I expect from them. And then I have it written down. Like, this is what I expect, and I'm not going to micromanage you on it. I don't have time for that, nor do I think it inspires growth. And if you're not progressing and growing, you're not happy. And then from there, I think if you have that culture, and it will ebb and flow. It's going to grow. It's going to change as you become a better leader. And I tell them, guys, I'm new at this too. I don't expect a team of people who say yes to me all the time. I expect you to challenge me and to really keep pushing the envelope so we can be so good people can't ignore us. And I think when you give a mindset to your team of what you're looking for, people either rise to that level or they weed themselves out because you keep reinforcing that, you keep pushing that, you keep reminding them. So like on my KPIs, it says like, how are we like Apple and Google? And how can we be better so we make things easier for people? Or what value can we add? And just tying it back to that. So then when I notice there's a negative trend, I don't create the solution for them. I look to see what's going on. And this is just Kiera Dent's model. I'm sure there's 1,000 other models that would work great, but today it's my input for you. So
Yeah, no, I want Kiera Dent's model. That's what we're trying to get here. So this is good.
Perfect. But when they come to me and I'm seeing a negative trend, I'll say, hey, Kaylee, our AR is at 64,000. That's clearly a problem. Like we have credit cards on file. Why on earth are we at 64,000? And this is definitely an area. And this is a true story. Like I could not figure out why my bank account was just sitting flat. I'm like, what is going on? Well, we were not tracking our AR. And I realized that needed to change immediately. So I asked Kaylee, I said, this is something I see. What do you see? And she was like, this is not acceptable. And I said, okay, fantastic. Agreed. We're on the same page. What do you think would be the best solution? And I really try hard to empower my team members to be able to make mistakes. I mean, that was on Kaylee's watch. She was responsible for watching the AR. She's responsible for invoicing clients. That's on her. But seeing the KPI and seeing that, I have her come up with a solution. And if I agree with it, fantastic. If not, we work on it until it becomes that way. Because I'm very big on wanting people to be independent leaders and very with the ability to try things out, to experiment. So Kaylee will come up with a system that she thinks will work and we track it for a couple of weeks. And if it's not working, we pivot and we try another way until we get the results we want. But I feel like you have to be willing to have that conversation, set the culture that you're looking for, and then hold your team to that level that you're looking for. Always encouraging them to make mistakes. That's totally fine. I don't care how many mistakes you make, as long as it's done with like you find the solution and what you're going to do so it doesn't happen again. And I think when you have a team that's very much that way, it'll take a while. Not all team members are like that.
Yeah.
Not all people think that way. I hire very selectively and I want people that are like that just because I truly don't have time to micromanage. So if you need somebody to hold your hand, this is not the company for you. That's how I would do it with your teams and your team members.
I love this because this culture piece, this like motivating, keep getting people on board, sharing your vision, holding them accountable, but giving them space to both learn and experiment, but then troubleshoot and move forward. I think this is the part of leadership that's hard to do. It has to be intentional. It has to be repeated. And if it's not communicated effectively over and over and over, people don't think that we really believe these things. They just think you want to hear what you want to hear and you're the boss. And so it's up to you and you tell us what to do. And I feel like that's how a lot of offices run. It's just like, oh, that's just how we do things. It's just what the boss wants. So we have to be very intentional about empowering people to think for themselves, to track, hold themselves accountable, to try new things. I loved what you said about people weeding themselves out. So let's take a specific example here, and this will be kind of the last thing we focus on to wrap this up. So let's say we went into a new office as a new owner, and one of the things that we noticed in this office was that hygiene could use some improvement. And this isn't an office where you've hired all of these hygienists yourself. So some of them are going to be team members that maybe aren't as motivated, and some of them are going to be more motivated. Some of them are going to be more receptive to this kind of message and leadership and culture. How would you go about building a culture of excellence in hygiene and improving hygiene, holding them accountable, tracking these numbers? What would be an example? And this obviously it's going to depend on the office, it's going to depend on the market, it's going to depend on what you're trying to focus on. But say that you're trying to grow hygiene's production. How would you build culture and accountability around that?
Yeah, that's good. And I'm glad you tied back to this because I believe that culture should also have, especially if you're transitioning, purchasing a practice, you've got team members that have been there, have them help you build the culture that they want to be a part of as well. Because when when you're the boss, like when you're saying like, well, you're just the boss and I just do this because it's the boss. Well, they have no ownership in that. They're not going to want to really resonate with that. So
Hmm.
first of all, having them help you build the culture, having them help you build the core values that they think you're founded upon, you can fine tune, but at least they have input. Then they're really going to grasp into it.
Let me dig in here because
Okay.
I feel like that's another one of those like, oh yeah, we should totally have our team buy in and tell us what the culture is. But like, what does that look like? How what you sit down with the team and you say, what would you say? Would you say, hey, I want this office to be something that we have all built together. What do you care about when you come to work, when you take care of patients, when you're here at our dental office? What are the things that are most important to you? Like, is that how would you start
Mhm.
that discussion and turn that into a culture?
Awesome. I love this. I personally, when I go into coach an office, because I have to very quickly, I'm usually there for a day to a day and a half. That's all the time I've got with an office.
Yeah,
And I very quickly need to get buy-in. And so I've had to work on this a lot.
yeah,
But one of the easiest ways to do it is I say, okay, guys, if we were to have a dream office, we've got a dream office. What would be the core foundational pieces that you would want to see that you think would make the dream office?
hmm,
Because then it's not your practice right now because they get into the weeds. They're like, well, we could have lunch breaks or which they should have, but
right,
like just weird little things that aren't as big. And so I say, what would be your dream practice? Because then it pushes them to dream big and you frame it of like for our core values. What would be our core values? Like, for example, we believe in being full of integrity. Like that's a core value that would be a part of a dream company because then everyone's operating at a higher level. So you kind of prime them of where you want them to go, but then ask them for this dream office and then kind of put it all together so they all feel like, yeah, that's what I want. So that's what I do in team meetings. Like, okay, what would be your dream practice? We want to have better communication. We want to have this. We want to have that. Fantastic. Well, then let's say growth, fun, and communication. Does that, and I like, that's me swaying them where I want them to go, but tying it to what they just told me as well. And so that's how I do it with the team, but also letting them know you can even have like a team meeting with them. So it's maybe an hour, 2 hours that you set aside some time of, we really want this to be a team. I don't want this to be Dr. Lowe's practice. I want you to have ownership because I believe if you have ownership in a practice and you help create this, you're going to be much more tied to it. You're going to love coming to your job because you helped build the culture and we all know the expectations. So like, do you see how you pivot on both sides of it, helping them see the reason behind it so they have buy-in with you. And that's personally how I would do it with them.
awesome. I love that. It's a really specific phrase, sentence, way that you can set them up, giving them both permission and guidance. And then you can take what they've said and bring it back to your vision for the practice as well. Perfect. Okay, I love it. So,
Yes. And I'm going to, sorry, there's one other thing I wanted to add in here
yep.
before when you said like, well, this is Dr. Lowe's practice and, you know, and they're saying, well, I just do this because this is what you want. If you ever hear a team member say that, that's when I stop them and I'm like, okay, hang on. Why are we doing this? Like, yes, this is my practice, but beyond that, like, this is our practice.
Yeah.
So what is the reason behind this? Like, why are we doing this? And help them understand the why, because they're like, well, you just want me to do these KPIs. Wrong. Like I've failed you as a leader. That's not why we do these KPIs. We do these KPIs so we can see where our practice is falling apart and where it's doing really well. So we're not spending a ton of time working on something that doesn't need to be fixed. We're actually making your life easier because you can hone in on it. And so anytime somebody says that to you, that's when you need to, you have failed as a leader because they don't see the value or the reason behind this, and helping them understand why, they'll have much more buy-in if you can help them see that this makes their life easier, because then you also know what's going on. So you're not micromanaging them either. Like you can see what's going on in a glimpse instead of harping on them all the time, asking for this information. And then your team really buys into it and they're excited about it.
Okay, awesome. No, I love that. And using these moments where you realize people aren't bought in and are just doing it because you say so. Great moments. And I love when you say, I've failed you as a leader, because It's taking that ownership back onto yourself and saying, I haven't given you what we need to take this to the next level, and that's my fault, not yours. That extreme ownership. I love all this. The So Good You Can't Ignore You, the Steve Martin quote / book by Cal Newport. That's like one of my all-time favorites. Right. And all of these things. It's just we're on the same.
We are, but that's hard. That's super hard as a leader. I used to be awful at taking ownership for that. But truly, if you can say that when a team member comes to you and you can say, gosh, like I failed you as a leader, that lets your team know they can make mistakes and it's okay. Like they have to feel safe to make these mistakes because you'll see so much more growth. And when I can tell my team, you guys, I'm so sorry. I literally failed you as a leader. Like I should have done this. I apologize. This is what you can count on me for in the future. Or let me help you with this because I failed you. Bam. When you come at them and you're like, hey, we're falling apart here. They can be, instead of being like, well, excuse after excuse after excuse, they've just seen you as the leader take ownership for this. You consistently have that as your culture. How much easier will it be for them to take ownership? And if they choose not to, coach them for a little while, but ultimately, if you're constantly on them for culture and changing and being this way, they'll either rise to the occasion or find a different boat that they want to be on. So, and that's great.
So I'm really sad right now because I'm looking and we're at like 51 minutes and
you want the hygiene.
No,
we gotta hurry.
We can't.
I'm on it.
We can't do that. We can't do it justice. And I think I need to get you back because also hiring associates and multi-practice in general, I think between hygiene, hiring associates, multi-practice, not that any of these topics are going to be relevant to me in the near future. This is all hypothetical, folks, and I'll be able to be less cryptic very soon. But I really want your perspective, and I know you have a ton to offer, and it's 12:44 a.m. for me.
I know. Richard was a rock star, everybody. You need to know he slept in so he could do a late podcast with me tonight. So thank you, because he didn't want me getting up at midnight my time to accomplish this his time. So.
The 3-hour time difference is brutal. Like
brutal.
When I was in Texas or Phoenix, it's just like, oh yeah, we're all on the same page. This was awesome. Culture, accountability, transition, KPIs. We got some really specific ways to be a leader, to raise our team up, to hold ourselves accountable, to hold them accountable. And I'm going to go back and re-listen to this. Like I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and implement these things and knowing that I'm going to have to adapt all of this for each office, for each situation that I end up being in. And the principles work. It's the specific application of how you figure out how to do it that's going to maybe differ slightly from office to office, but those core principles are there. And I think we got concrete enough that people have something to turn around and take and say, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting a weekly report with my KPIs, or maybe I'm not taking the opportunity to lead our culture and to hold myself accountable, hold them accountable, and to really be able to implement this. So this was fantastic.
You're kind and I appreciate it. It's fun to share these things because I used to not be this type of a leader when I was an office manager. And sometimes, like, as you were listing that off, I'm like, whew, hopefully people don't listen to that and think like, I can't do all this. That's just too much work. I will tell you, it might be a little more work at the beginning, but you will see that it will be so freeing because you'll have a team that I don't feel like teams ever can self-lead because they need to have a leader that can guide them. But your life will be so much more free because you've got people that know what it's expected. They're doing the things you want them to do. They're holding themselves accountable. And your life is so much easier than it is when you don't have this type of a structure for you. So if it feels a little overwhelming, pick one or two things, but just know it really, really will free you up. So thank you as always, Richard. It's always fun to chat with you, and I appreciate this chance to do so.
Likewise, guys, stop right now. If you didn't do it at the beginning of the episode, go find Dental A Team podcast, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. I'm assuming you're publishing them everywhere that Libsyn will let you. And if you're not, I just signed up for Spotify and I'm like checking every day.
Oh.
Mine hasn't hit Spotify yet, but it used to be exclusive on Spotify where only certain shows were on there. Now, if you've got a Libsyn account, you can push it to Spotify. So that's my other unsolicited podcasting advice for you for the week.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. I'll take notes of that because honestly, I just told luckily Mark has his whole crew that does podcasts. And so I just talk and then they do whatever they need to do from there. So
Cool.
but I'll check into that. That's great. That's really good advice.
Wherever you listen to podcasts, go look for Dental A Team. And if you can't find it, then reach out to Kiera and say, hey, I listen here and I don't see you here. I really want to hear your content. And then they'll make it happen for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely will. So welcome. I'm so very excited to have everyone come over to there. And Richard, we'll love to catch up and get the rest of these topics dialed in because, they're so good and it's so fun to chat with you.
Cool. Likewise. Thank you, Kiera. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Take care. Okay. I hope that was as useful for you as it was for me. I have a lot that I know exactly what I want to do now in terms of my KPIs and holding weekly interviews and having a weekly report on KPIs. I love the fact that she makes her office managers or the people who are responsible for her various businesses create their own report rather than generate just the automatic, here's whatever software, it generates the report. So why do I need to? No, instead, she makes them tallied up and send it over. And it's going to be compared to the goal that's sitting there right next to that number. And they're going to have to come up with 3 specific things that they can focus on based on where the numbers are going and where they see room for improvement and room for growth. So I thought that was super applicable, very simple, something that if they're doing that, that means you're not having to pull up these numbers, and it's going to create room for growth. It's going to create opportunity for development of you and your practice and your office manager and individual team members, because you're going to see where improvement is most needed and be able to come up with a plan. And then I love that she gives her team the permission to fail, the permission to try new things, and that she holds herself accountable. So I thought that was all great practical verbiage. What would your dream practice look like? Asking your team where they want to go with this practice, and then building your culture and your values and centering back and having everyone on the same page is not easy to do. And so this was a whole bunch of examples of how you can do it. If you're still struggling after trying to implement all this, that's when you hire someone like Kiera to come in and help you get buy-in, to help you. And sometimes having that third-party authority, if you've been banging your head against the wall, like she mentioned in the episode, where some people, they're like, man, I feel like I've been saying these same things over and over and over. Maybe that's when you want to get coaching of some sort, of someone coming into your office and helping your team out. So phenomenal episode. Go download the Dental A Team podcast. In other news, George is obviously taking a little bit of a break, which he deserves, some paternity leave from the podcast. And I have a lead on a potential new co-host. And as Kiera has proven, there are too many male voices in dentistry. And so I love this trend of talented dentists and consultants and advisors having shows that can add the perspective that's not the stereotypical guy dentist perspective. So in that trend, we might be having a female co-host here in the future. So more on that later, but super excited to share some more with you guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much for the reviews, for sharing this. It's not too late in February. If you want to leave a video review on our Facebook group, it's on the announcement post there. There's not a ton of submissions right now. So as of right now, if you want a chance at Voices of Dentistry 2020 in January 2020, if you want a free ticket, it really would not take too much to get that for you. So leave a video review and we really appreciate it. We'll talk with you guys next time.